Hi, welcome to the grades 9 and 10 book video. I'm Shannon Whiteside, Program Director for the Alveary, and I'm here today with a few of our curriculum developers, Carrie Forney, Catherine Avery, and Danielle Merritt-Sinceri. This is the 9th year of the Alveary, and we are so excited to give you a preview of some of the books we will be reading for the 24-25 school year. If you want to learn more about the Alveary, you can browse our viewbook, which is linked in the video description below. The viewbook also contains a free term of composer study lessons for you to try out. I want to reiterate that we are just highlighting some of the books that are part of our curriculum. There are many more. I also want to remind you that although the books are an important part of the lesson, there is more to a lesson plan than reading and narrating books. In school education, Mason writes, "The business of the teacher is to put his class in the right attitude toward their book by a word or two of his own interest in the matter contained and of his own delight in the manner of the author." While Charlotte Mason cautions us as educators against the temptation to over-explain, she encourages teachers to share brief comments to rouse students' interest and prepare them to engage with the lesson. In Alveary lesson plans, we often give discussion questions, pertinent background information, links to pictures or maps, and other similar activities so you can put students in the right attitude toward the lesson. For high school students who are often working more independently, the lesson plans themselves often function as the instrument to help a student rouse their interest in the day's work.
Just one other note before we keep going. We just like to encourage you to take a minute and watch our videos on how we choose books. We cover the questions that we ask ourselves when we're deciding on books each year. So you have the background information that you need to understand our goals, and also the information you need to tailor the curriculum to your students. So we suggest that you click over there now, and we'll see you back here soon.
Let's get started with Bible first. Charlotte Mason considered Bible lessons a critical part of a student's life. She wanted every day to bring new thoughts of God, new hopes of heaven, as she says in school education. She did not want Bible lessons to be moralistic and for children to feel like the Bible is just a list of do's and don'ts, but for students to know God as their Father and their King, and Jesus as the Savior of the world. From 7th grade through high school, students read through the Old Testament chronologically. After reading Acts and a harmonized version of the Gospels in 7th and 8th, our high school students move into the epistles and the rest of the New Testament. One of the Gospels is read each year as well. All passages are studied with the aid of Bible resources and commentaries as appropriate.
And one fascinating addition to the program this year is a First Nations version of the New Testament in English. And the introduction states that it was created as a gift to all English-speaking First Nations people and to the entire sacred family, which is the body of the chosen one. It was birthed out of a desire to provide an English Bible that connects in a culturally relevant way to the traditional heart languages of the over 6 million English-speaking First Nations people of North America. Just like reading a Bible in a second language provides insights and perspectives, so this too, even though in English, will provide a similar experience. We hope that it not only helps us all to see First Nations people as fellow image bearers, but that we might see Jesus, or Creator sets free, as he is called, with new eyes. So another new addition to also is the inclusion of Old Testament Today. This is a journey from ancient context to contemporary relevance by John Walton and Andrew Hill. This book, along with the other Bible helps, Bible Atlas and the Cultural Background Study Bible, will be used through the high school years to provide context and guidance while reading. For church history, the 9th graders will read along with the 7th and 8th graders 2 books called Reign and Reform, which give a nice sense of the people and the places and the times. As well, they will have a choice of a biography to go deeper into the life of an individual.
We are very excited about these books and others in this series. We have searched for a long time to find books about church history written for this age level, and these books just came out in 2022 and 2023. And I really like the fact that the author includes both men and women who have lived out their faith. So I think this is a great asset to our curriculum.
And then the 10th graders, along with those in 11th and 12th, will read a book called Bullies and Saints, which is an honest look at the good and evil of Christian history. There are some events, especially in this time period, that are hard to read about, as there were terrible things that were done in the name of Christ. Dixon does a wonderful job of pointing out that Jesus gave the world a beautiful melody of charity, humility, and human dignity. And while many of his followers have been tone deaf, many others have sung the tune and transformed the world. His perspective is encouraging and hopeful. And then in art, we'll move into there. All students study the same main artist over the year, but the lessons increase in depth as students grow. And this year, we're studying paintings from the Tang Dynasty in term 1, and then works by Botticelli in term 2, and Hans Holbein the Younger in term 3. High school students are also reading this book, Rembrandt in the Wind, over the year, which discusses other artists from the time period, as well as some that they have studied in earlier years, as well as some new ones. And the subtitle of the book is Learning to Love Art Through the Eyes of Faith. The author, who's a pastor, states that the following chapters are part art history, part biblical study, part philosophy, and part analysis of the human experience, but they are all story. So we're excited about how students' relationship with art will grow through this book and through engaging in another year of picture study. One of the fascinating little details that I just keep thinking about over and over is, and I won't spoil it, but when he talks about Vermeer, I've never heard this whole thing about there was something that Vermeer was doing when he was painting from a certain perspective into the same room that just completely changed everything about how he was able to really display the details of his pictures that he's so well known for, and that we all love the Vermeer pictures because of it. So it's a little teaser there that you really need to read this book, because it's just fascinating, the discoveries that he's made in the world of art.
In architecture, we are going to be reading a book, Brunicelli's Dome. And you are brought right into the medieval world of Florence, and you learn about the people of the time and what life was like as the dome took shape, eventually high above the city. And I had the privilege of going to Florence last summer, and it still is a very important aspect of the city. And everywhere you go, you see the dome. So this will be a great book for our students to get an idea of when that was built and how it's still impacting people today.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite books. It brings it to life in a way that you just can't imagine of what that whole process was like. We don't have things nowadays that take hundreds of years to build like that. And so it is really just a fascinating look into that world.
So for geography, nice segue right there. Grade 9 does a lot of map making, and they look at how geography plays into history and politics with the book Prisoners of Geography, which has been a favorite of Alveary students for a number of years now. And then they also have a choice between two different books that are both about epic historical adventures. One of them is Brendan Voyage, and then the other one is Hawaii Rising. Then 10th grade is also reading When Asia Was the World, which takes them on journeys across Asia with a whole host of characters. And it's really interesting because each chapter is based on an actual memoir of someone who lived and worked and traveled in the Asian world during our time period from about 500 to 1500, the book covers. And it's a great example of how historical geography goes right along with history, as we get to see and hear from the people who were actually there during the times that we're studying about. And it also ties into the poetry, because we're actually reading some of the Tang Dynasty poetry in our poetry lessons. And as you also heard, we're also studying Chinese art in term 1 as well. So that will be just like a cool connection between all those books.
In rotation 1, which covers the time period of 800 to 1650, we're starting a book for U.S. history that all the high school students will read over this year and next year, called American Colonial History by Thomas Kidd, who's a well-published Christian historian and has taught history for many years. In this book, he tells the story through the themes of religion and conflict. He'll be a great guide as we walk through this time period. As always, we strive to find many voices from the times to better understand events from different points of view. So throughout our history streams, we include biographies of a medieval queen and Queen Eleanor, Pocahontas and the true story of Pocahontas, which is written from oral tradition passed down by her own people, a leader of one of the great empires of West Africa and Mansa Musa, and from the conquistadors themselves and conquistador voices.
For ancient history, we're studying the time period 3500 to 550 BC. Ninth graders will read 2 books from a wonderful series from Oxford Press. These 2 books are The Ancient Near Eastern World and The Ancient Egyptian World. These books are written by experts in their field, but they are geared for students. The authors tell about the people and events of the past in an engaging manner by tying in archaeological finds and highlighting primary sources throughout the book. We are really excited about these books because although these events happened thousands of years ago, there continues to be new discoveries that help us better understand these ancient peoples. So we want our students to be exposed to what is still happening in the study of archaeology and ancient civilizations. 10th graders will also read The Ancient Egyptian World that I mentioned, but in addition to that, several other books bringing the times to life, such as Mesopotamia, The Invention of the City, which details the growth of the land between the rivers. For world history, students in grades 9 and 10 will read another book by Oxford Press called An Age of Voyages. This book covers the age of exploration from Europe into Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Americas during the 14th through 17th centuries. The author does a fine job of presenting different sides of an issue or event without being judgmental. The text is also engaging, and the use of photos, maps, and primary sources is exceptional. Also, we've been fortunate to build a relationship with Dr. Tracy McKenzie, who is a respected historian and professor of history at Wheaton College. We have valued his insight about the study of history, and he has helped us realize one of the ways we show love for our neighbors who have different histories is to learn something about their past. We want to encourage our students to bring an attitude of love and humility to the study of history. So our 10th and 12th grade students will be reading his books, A Little Book for New Historians, as well as his book entitled The First Thanksgiving.
Okay, so let's talk about literature, which goes right along with history at these grades. They're really inseparable. Students in grades 9 and 10 are reading the same literature books this year. We were excited for them to read Beowulf in this beautiful edition by Seamus Heaney. We really like the translation and the edition because Heaney writes a very accessible and just really lovely rendition in the English that preserves a lot of the Old English poetic devices. And then also the illustrated edition has just really cool artifacts and interesting historical pieces that are great for kids' Book of Centuries. And while we're talking about epic poems, they're also reading another epic poem in terms 2 and 3 by Edmund Spenser, who people think is probably one of the other significant influences on the English language alongside Shakespeare. And we're reading the first of a larger work, The Fairy Queen. We're reading The Fierce Wars and Faithful Loves by Roy Maynard. He's the translator. And we like this translation for some similar reasons to the one I just talked about with Beowulf, because Maynard has a lot of really helpful footnotes and yeah, it's just a really accessible while still retaining the authenticity of the original text as well. We're also reading selections from the book of Rumi, 105 stories and fables that illumine, delight, and inform. And it's just a fascinating collection of fables by a famous 13th century Persian poet and author who actually in the last 50 years or so has become really famous in the US, which is interesting. And in addition to just being fun fables, kind of like Aesop's fables, they also just paint a really fascinating picture of life in the medieval Persian culture and world. So that is really fun. And then we also wanted to tell you about a few of the historical fiction books that we're using to give students a sense of various aspects of the time. So we're reading The King's Fifth by Scott Odell. And that takes us into the world of a young cartographer and the conquistadors. And then we're also reading Anna of Byzantium, which is all about Anna Karenina, who was a Greek Byzantine princess in the 12th century, who wrote one of the few surviving histories of the time from the Byzantine world and perspective.
And that one I know is a lot of people's really favorite book from this time period. So that's going to be fun for students.
As students move into high school, they continue to practice writing in a wide variety of ways and also start learning more about specific forms of writing as well. One of those is the essay, and we use Essay Voyage by Michael Clay Thompson in grade 9 to introduce students to the basics of the essay form. He does a great job of explaining writing concepts in an engaging way with lots of examples from good literature. Then in grade 10, we'll be using Style, the basics of clarity and grace, to start introducing students to the idea of revision and editing and learning how to write not just for themselves, but for others. This is a classic text that covers 10 writing concepts that affect how a sentence sounds to readers. Different chapters focus on things like cohesion, emphasis, concision, and more. We are also studying etymology in 10th grade with the book Caesar's English 2 by Michael Clay Thompson. Of course, students also spend several lessons each week actually practicing these ideas as well and continuing to learn how to write summaries, outlines, verse, descriptive scenes, and more so that they can learn how to have fun with words and how to use words well and wisely in a variety of ways as they move on in life and school.
Let's jump into science next. We've designed a flexible high school science program for this year. So for more information about that program, about how to use it, and the other elective options, be sure to check out our high school science program intro video, which is linked in the description. Within that flexible program, we're recommending chemistry for our 9th graders. And what I love about this text in particular is that the authors truly believe that everyone can and should have an appreciation for chemistry. The voice in this text reads like my favorite teachers and professors, and they are truly delighted and inspired by their subject. In fact, Dr. DaCosta not only co-authored the primary text for the course, but he also co-produced the Faraday Candle lectures online, which is where we're actually going to begin the course. So we'll be incorporating the videos for those lectures, and this little companion book is actually optional for students and teachers who would like to have a copy. Older editions of the primary text are readily available and they are fine to use, but I will say that the current edition actually has some really thoughtful formatting, and for some students, it's visually easier to read than the previous edition. The publisher also offers a digital ebook, which is very reasonably priced, and it has enhanced typesetting and audio, so there are plenty of options to make that course accessible for everyone. We're also incorporating a coloring book, an activity book for this course. It has lots of games in it that support interest and reinforcement. And students will use it to learn about the periodic table, various elements, and there are a lot of games, as I mentioned, in the back of that book. I just wanted to show you a couple of these element tiles that one of my students made. They're very simple, but there's lots of games to go along with them, and she has a little bit of a fascination now with the table and some of the games that go along with these because of this supplement, so it's been great. Beginning with chemistry allows our 10th graders to avoid the crash course of that topic that typically has to happen in biology. So for that 10th grade biology, we are loving Novare's general biology text. I love the sequence in this text. Miss Ayala begins with the molecules of biology and works her way up in increasing complexity to the human body and ecology and evolution. I think the text reads really well. I think the author does a beautiful job conveying the science as a complement to one's faith journey. And we're also holding space in this course for The Fool and the Heretic. And this is a really important book in which two scientists who are also Christians and who hold opposing views regarding evolution engage in meaningful dialogue for the sake of kingdom building. So you will not want your student to miss that one. We also have another coloring book in this course, and there's a bit of everything in this coloring book. I'll give you a few examples. Here's a coloring page, a coloring plate of the cell, and see, this one is a genetics coloring plate. So it goes really across a lot of different topics, and we'll use that throughout the year. Both of these courses, chemistry and biology, are getting all new custom lab manuals for this year as well, because you can't relate to the universe of things without the things. So these downloadable resources, as well as our partnership with Home Science Tools, make those labs really accessible, and we're excited to share those with you this year.
Sounds really exciting. And, just it's the constant revision of getting things to be lined up right and make it accessible for students and to really help them to grow in their relationship with science. So we're excited about that. And we have several science electives also for grades 11 and 12 that have been there now for several years, but new this year as well is an advanced nature study elective that can be used in any of the high school grades. So the course uses a renowned naturalist, her name is Roseanne Hansen's book, Master of Field Arts, to take nature study and journaling to the next level. It has fascinating sections on tracking animals and how to draw those, and pigments and sketching and all sorts of things. So we include options for citizen science in that as well. So after years of nature study and a Mason education, it's fun to think about what this can look like at the high school level.
We hope you are as excited about the books as we are. Thank you for joining us in this preview. You can find more samples on our website, a free set of lesson plans, and more information about the Alveary in our view book and on our YouTube channels. We are so excited for the adventures that await both teacher and student this next year. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.